Yeah, another cracking week. And obviously we wrapped up Q1 as all businesses did. And wow, I mean, most people have said to me, and I'm sure anyone listening to this is thinking exactly the same thing. It's like, where did that go? 1 minute it was Christmas, and now it's just been Easter. So the last week was a short week because there was the public holidays, which always throws things a little bit. But yeah, again, I mentioned before we had our new young team join, and they've been settling in a little bit more, going great guns. Boucle on the data and analysis side of things, and Nasreen at the Shire and Piway on the recruitment and executive search team, going great guns. Really settled in nicely. I mean, it's always hard when you start a new job, isn't it? And obviously that's what most people who are listening to this will know. But it's gone really well. We've won another couple of projects as well, which I'll get into shortly, which will kickstart in earnest. But another busy week, coming into Q2, some big quarter for some of the countries that we work in, and therefore for some of the law firms and corporates that we work with. If you just take here in sunny South Africa, we've got the elections the end of May, which is obviously part of Q2. So everyone's starting to talk about it, who's being voted for, what's going to happen, and for that, we will often look at the markets. So let's look at what's happening. Let's look at the financial markets and what part that's been playing. And, things are looking okay. And things are looking pretty steady. So I will always look at the markets and the banks for my indicator if something is going to be a shock. And at the moment, nothing looks too shocking. So preparing for a big couple of weeks ahead. And I'll get into that shortly and later on in this talk. But yeah, another good week.
What is happening in the legal African markets?
Yeah, so we obviously I can't speak for all 54 countries yet. Watch this space. But we are working in South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Mozambique, Kenya, Tanzania, Nigeria, Egypt and Morocco. So it's 9. And they are all pointing northwards in respect of the number of job opportunities available and the firms that are growing. And also in fairly common areas as well in terms of practice areas. So again, we're seeing a lot of demand for partner and director level hires and team moves in the corporate and M&A space, private equity, tax, litigation, construction and mining, energy, and the biggie in emerging markets, which is projects and infrastructure. So yeah, the big 6 areas which we're always looking at. We're working with law firms of all shapes and sizes. So strong local firms, those with a Pan-African presence, and international, global law firms. All of them looking for similar types of people, similar books of business, similar team structure. So there's a lot of opportunities for the top lawyers at the moment. A lot of choice, and that's great because the knock-on effect of that is the remuneration is strong, a lot of the firms are coming to the party. So we're seeing, if we can just take a couple of those markets just to give the listeners and the watchers a little bit more context. If you take Tanzania, for instance, very much in development phase as a country, and a lot of need for projects, project infrastructure, project finance type lawyers, and corporate M&A. Fantastic expat place, fantastic place to go and live, raise kids, or go and have fun as well if you're not quite at the marriage and kids stage yet. Really top class work, really good packages, very strong. A lot of the firms will have a strong connection to North Africa, but also down to southern parts of Africa and also across the Middle East as well, to the Gulf region. So, we're talking about some really good firms with really good work. if we take South Africa, for instance, again, we're finding that, and I don't want to speak out of turn here, but the last 12 months for some of the international firms has been a settling down period. And what I mean by that is there's been a change of strategy, maybe a change of leadership. There's been a lot of movement, people coming in, going out, and it's been relatively turbulent. But one of the questions I often get asked when I'm called or I'm asked to meet with partners who are looking at the international firms in South Africa, I'm always asked, what is their strategy? What is their goal? And that should be a concern for some of those firms because it isn't clear. And if they want to attract the very best talent, then it should be really, really clear what the strategy is. No one really minds what that strategy is. It could be that they want to be, back office to the global offices. South Africa, as in terms of real cost terms, in US dollars, is much lower than some of the other markets. But the lawyers here are fantastic, so why not? But let's be clear if that's the case, so that people know what they're getting. Some are very much working as part of a global unit, and that is fantastic for the right lawyer and great opportunity for those who want an international career. But again, it's got to be very, very clear. So that's these are just a couple of things that I'm finding, or we're finding in the market, is that law firms have got to start opening up a little bit more about their strategy, being a bit clearer with their strategy. How they go about that, I think it's really give away as much information as you need to, really, or as you're comfortable with. Marketing, business development, when you're talking to people, when you're interviewing people, give a little, so that people know what they're walking into. That would be one of my suggestions. But look, there's a whole heap of things going on. These are fast-moving markets. The 9 that I've just mentioned, we could be here all day, and I'm very keen not to keep you here all day. So just touching on those, we're talking about 2 different markets, which are only a plane ride away, working very closely together. Some of the firms are in the region, but one is on the trajectory of real growth, project infrastructure going on, and the other is really trying to find its feet again in the sense of what are the internationals. And what are the big local firms? What are their strategies for growth?
About law firms, what else should they be on the lookout for?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's obviously I've just touched on that in respect of one of the things in terms of being a bit more clearer and more open with the strategy, but also there's 2 things actually. One is on the expectations. One is expectations of the people that they're hiring, and the other is ties kind of into strategy, but is like, let's say, looking cross-border. The first one, expectations. I've been doing and working in the partner and team recruitment space now for well over 15 years, and when we get it right, or when us and the clients get it right and the candidates get it right, it's brilliant. It's magic. There's nothing finer. It's you're adding huge amounts of value, return on investment. Everybody's happy. It's wonderful. But quite a lot of times it goes wrong. And I think one of the things that we work very heavily on with our clients and our candidates is the word expectations. And it's not, and I don't just mean from a remuneration perspective, but it's like, what do you want from these people? How much time would you consider, if they're there with you, how much time would you consider as a return on investment? Bearing in mind that everybody knows that the first year of someone's employment is really, it's your investment. They're very unlikely to show much of a return on investment until year 2. Everybody knows that. So that's why we do so much work to make sure that the person does stay past 12 months. But the expectations goes very, very far. I mean, it really does. It's expectations of that person's client base. It's expectations of what they'll bring to the firm in terms of revenue, but also personality, leadership, management style. Are they going to be able to infuse and encourage the youngsters? Are they going to be a real addition? Expectations when you're investing that heavily is, rightly or wrongly, off the scale. And, it is also for the individual. Why would they move and why would they join you? What are they looking for? So we work very heavily on the word expectations. And it's something that I would, part of this series, these weekly meetings and interviews that we do now is obviously to try and lift the lid a little on what's going on behind the scenes, not just at GRM, but when you're actually investing in recruitment. And one of the things not enough people do is really focus on matching those expectations and really drilling down on what their expectations are, both from the firm and from the individual or the team. And the other thing, again, what they should be looking out for from a law firm perspective is what are the plans for overseas? And by overseas, I mean cross-border. So Africa is at this beginning phase as a continent of growth. It is, anyone who's here is going through some of the most exciting times there ever can be. The next 2 decades are going to be wild across the continent. And it was one of the main reasons why I moved here, because of the opportunities and the opportunity to bring world-class service to South Africa and to other African markets. The law firms here in South Africa, and I know I'm just talking about South Africa now, but this will be fairly common across other African nations as well. I don't know why some of them, certainly some of the smaller to medium-sized firms, aren't looking at having either relationships in other African nations or opening up offices overseas. I keep saying overseas, but it's not really overseas, cross-border. Again, we talked the numbers before, and the numbers that everybody knows. There's over 15,000 registered law firms in South Africa, probably about 5,000 or 6,000 of them really working at maybe 7,000 working at operating properly. And that is a lot for a relatively smallish market. If you're looking for growth and you're ambitious, yes, of course, there's practicing issues. You personally might not be able to practice in another country, but that doesn't mean that your business can't offer something. That your way of doing work can't offer something. And I think it's something that we need to be looking at quite heavily. And I would encourage all law firm owners of any size, not only to be potentially looking at merging in their local markets to make themselves bigger and stronger and improve and grow the pie, as it were, but also look at, on your doorstep, Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and then further up you've got Malawi, Ghana, Rwanda obviously they're going places as a country, Tanzania, Kenya, etc. So they're the things that I would suggest that we consider looking at, expectations and growth.
Legal job seekers be on the lookout for?
Yeah, another great question. And it's something that really, as we move rapidly through this year, we are finding when the confidence comes back in the marketplace, which it is doing at the moment, then you find that more people are willing to look, and you're willing to look out there and see what's out there and move around and take a chance. Confidence breeds a little bit of increased appetite for risk, shall we say. So that's great, because I do believe that there are a lot of opportunities out there, certainly for some of the lawyers with the following or a certain technical practice or whatever it might be. We've talked a lot in previous interviews recently with regards to what the job seekers should look out for when it comes to dealing with recruiters or job boards. And I don't want to keep going on about that. So, I would advise people to have a look at the past couple of weeks and maybe we'll touch on it again at a later stage. But I don't want it to become a a series of interviews where I just really, effectively badmouth people, because that's not what I'm trying to do. As I said before, I've been very keen to make the industry better by shining a light on some of the practices that maybe need to be improved. But what should job seekers be? Well, let's go back to the word expectations. We live in a world now which is, obviously very immediate. People want things immediately. And I talked about this a lot the other day in a session that I gave, a training session, where I said, people don't have enough patience anymore when it comes to their careers. They want everything right now. And okay, that's fine. And certainly expectations have changed somewhat over the years. We have, gone from when I was a lot younger, maybe let's say 20 years ago, when, you were kind of really just happy to have a job, and just work hard, and, you'll be promised promotion at some point and things like that. We've kind of gone to the complete flip now, where we're dealing with a lot of professionals, and there is a sort of the angle that a lot of people come from is very much like, what is that firm going to give me? Why should I spend my time with them? So we have seen a sort of a 180 shift in people's approach when they're looking for jobs. So my first sort of warning, if you like, for people who are thinking like that is, it's not bad. It's not a bad thing to do. I certainly admire people who really stick to their guns and are, very clear on what they want. But maybe don't expect the company that you are potentially joining, or the law firm you're potentially joining, to be thinking that way. There is both parties have their own expectations. And what is perfect is if we can meet in the middle, and, each side gives a little. But if you're going to come in and it's very much about me and what can I get and what are they going to do for me, it's going to be a very short interview. So I think temper your expectations a little bit. Be prepared to meet in the middle, but don't give up on what you really, really want. And if it's something that you really want is working part time, or if it's flexible hours, or working from home, or whatever it might be, then stick to that, because that's obviously important. Stick to your core values and go from there. Another thing to expect as well, and this is very much for, I'll touch on two things. I'll touch on law firms, and then I'll touch on in-house. Law firms, they're not structured very differently to the same way they were 20 years ago. So, the more senior you are, you're going to need to be bringing clients, because there isn't necessarily going to be work for you when you walk through the door. Depends on the practice area, obviously, but you need to be bringing a following. I just haven't seen it in the last maybe 8 years or so. I haven't seen many lawyers get hired into other legal law firm positions without having, some sort of book of business. And in-house, there's quite often the expectations are just not matched when it comes to, what the lawyer is going in expecting in terms of work-life balance. And they're getting there and finding that they're working even harder than they did at a practice. So expectations is something that I think all job seekers need to be very wary of. And then obviously we get into remuneration as well. So we'll touch on that next week.
So what's on the horizon in the market?
Yeah, really good. I mean, let's talk about what's going on here at GRM, and let's talk about the market as well. So it's Q2. Oh, man, I can't announce it yet because we haven't actually signed the contract, but I'm going to try and skirt around something. So we have a fantastic events team that does a lot of our market entry work, when we're moving into new markets, and sets up a lot of our relationships and things like that, and runs some superb events like those who went to the summit would have seen a few weeks ago. We're on the verge of something that will be happening at the end of June. All I can say at the moment is it's with one of the major educational institutions, and it will be a mind-blowing event. that will attract the CEOs of all of the top JSE listed businesses, all of the banks, all of the law firms, all of the major lawyers. I mean, it's going to be a humongous event, big VIP event. It's going to be the must go to corporate event of the year. I thought the summit was brilliant, and it was. But this is going to be summit times 10. It's going to be in Johannesburg, and it's going to feature former presidents, business leaders. I mean, journalists, lawyers. It's going to be it's humongous. We are on the verge of signing the contract, so I'm hoping by next week we can announce it. And it will be the must-go-to corporate event of the year, and I cannot wait. I know, as you can tell, I can't even get the words out. I'm so excited about it. So that's coming up on the horizon. There's going to be more of these kind of things going on, because, and I tell you this why now, because I watch the markets super carefully, not just the markets in terms of the financial markets, the corporate markets. I'm reading the reports. I'm just reading a report now sent by our fantastic data analysis team about what's happening in the construction and retail markets across South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, and Nigeria, looking at what clients our lawyers might want to look at. But I'm also looking at how people are getting business. This is something that not a lot of people are aware of, potentially, is that at GRM, when the partners work with us, we work very clearly and closely on their business development plans and their business plans. That might include introducing them to new clients across the world that I know, obviously, using my network of people. But also what I'm realizing as well is there's more call, there's more desire for people to properly network in person again. We really are thankfully getting rid of the last little drops of COVID, of that disastrous time in our lives, and people are willing to and itching to get back in front of people. So we are making our events brilliant, VIP, close, cannot get in without an invite, really spectacular topics, great speakers, where people who come will get really get something out of it. So there's going to be that happening. There's more happening on that front. There's more, obviously, as I've just touched on, we're sort of launching more and more services in terms of helping lawyers with their client book. We've just launched a whole new series of career guidance videos that are available, and we'll have to put the link below, mylegalcareer.podia.com. There's a humongous amount of things like that. We're really driving. We are relentless here at GRM, but we are very clear and very deliberate in what we're doing. We listen to what the lawyers are telling us that they need, and we're acting accordingly, and I'm investing accordingly. So, as much as I can tell you, my next month is going to be, we've got 3 new projects that are going to involve us targeting the London market for people to be moving to Africa. So I'm going to be, in the next month, I'm going to be going home to interview lots of candidates, which obviously I'm not afraid of, going back home. And there's going to be trips for us to Tanzania, to Kenya, and there's some interesting stuff happening in Saudi Arabia and Dubai as well. So I might be on the road. So some of these might be done by Zoom, unless I can convince Carl to come with me.